Right, a little bit of theory on the quadratic. Important to know this. A typical quadratic looks like this. You'll have an x squared, you'll have an x, and you'll have a number. And sometimes you'll have an equals and a zero, but sometimes you won't. You'll just have the quadratic expression. If there's an equals and a zero, it's called a quadratic equation because you have an equation made with an equals. All right, a quadratic will always have an x squared. It'll always have a number with an x, and it'll always have a number on its own. When you draw out a quadratic, it'll look like a U shape, or it could be a negative, it could be an N shape. Okay, so for example, this guy here, when you draw him out, or if you draw him out, he would be an N shape. But this is a positive quadratic because there's a plus in front of the 3. This is a positive quadratic because there's a plus in front of the 2. Doesn't matter about these. This is a positive quadratic because you have a plus in front of the x squared. So they'd all be U shape. So the shape of this one would be a U. This one would be a U, and this one would be a U as well. This fella here has the minus, so it would be an N shape. Think of N for negative. Okay. So now, last bit here. When you solve your quadratic, so this is my quadratic, when I solve it, I've gone through in another video how to solve quadratics. I'm after getting factors x squared to be x and x, factors of 12 that will add up or take away to give me 7. Will be 4 and 3. Signs will be the same, they both be a plus. So there's my solved quadratic. Now, what do they mean? They're the factors. That's important. When you solve your quadratic, these things here, they're called the factors. If I multiplied this bracket by this bracket, if I multiply the factors, I'd come back to my original equation. When I solve it, so it's an equation equal to 0. When I solve it, I split it. And I say x plus 4 equals 0, so x equals minus 4 when it comes across the equals. X plus 3 equals 0, x equals minus 3 when it comes across the equals. These things here then, they're called the roots of the quadratic. And what does that mean? Well, the roots tell us where the graph cuts or crosses the x-axis. All right, see graph above. Well, I've just drawn it down here for you. So there's your y-axis, there's your x-axis, and I've just marked in my minus 3, minus 4, and the quadratic is crossing the graph there. So important to know that when you solve a quadratic like this, you get your two brackets. They're called the factors of the quadratic. And then when you solve the factors to find your x values, they're called the roots. And the roots are where it crosses the x-axis.